All right, Youngstown studio here. Nicholas Mastramico is on the program today. Nicholas, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, Joe.
Absolutely. So I got wind that somebody had said that you're going to be doing a speaking engagement in here in Boardman. So they said I absolutely had to talk to you about this space thing. I'm a big fan of space exploration and whatnot. So you'd be the perfect guest to come and talk about that kind of stuff. So first, why don't you give everybody your backstory and how you got involved in in the space program and whatnot.
Well, I'm originally from the area, the Mahoning Valley area. I went to the whole Boardman School District, Mark Street Elementary, Boardman Glenwood, and then I graduated from Boardman High School in 2000. And during that time, I actually starting off at Glenwood and then building it up in high school, I decided I was going to be an aerospace engineer and work for NASA. And I was that kid, working there, telling everybody, this is what I'm going to do. And so, most of my goals at high school and the classes I took, even during study halls and stuff, were to, propel myself in this direction. And, I even extra drafting classes for engineering there during study halls, things like that. So this has always been a dream of mine to work here at NASA. So even after high school, I continued on with my education locally there at Youngstown State, and I graduated there with a mechanical engineering degree. And during that time, I was lucky enough to get an internship down here in Huntsville at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, which was a nice stepping stone into this area of the country. For this local kid, never had gone south that much. Didn't know that Briar Hill Pizza isn't sold everywhere and Handles wasn't everywhere at the same time. So I came down here for that, and it was a good stepping stone into actually after the YSU. I got my aerospace engineering degree at the University of Alabama, and then from there I was able to transition out of college into a job with a contractor of NASA, and then to a civil servant job, which is what I'm doing now. So it's really been important to me to stay. Of course, my family's still back there in the Mahoning Valley, and it's always been important to me to keep contacts back there, and then also keep contacts with my teachers back there, because one thing when I was going to Boardman, I remember some of the smiles when I said, I'm going to work for NASA. I'm going to go and I'm going to be in the space program, because it's not really something, at least at that time. Hopefully it's changed, and hopefully I could help change that. It wasn't something that people thought, oh yeah, everyone from here goes and works at NASA,
Right.
Even though we have something in Cleveland, and it's just the industries around the area, down in Huntsville. I do outreach programs all the time, either here or nationally. And I try to do them nationally, away from where NASA is, because where NASA is to the kids there, it's just a way of life. I went to a elementary school, and I'm talking, about rockets and space and everything. And, I'm seeing glazed over looks, and I'm looking at them like, wait a minute, if I was in class and someone came and talked about NASA and space or anything, I would be all into this. And so finally I raised my hand and I went, hey, whose mom or dad works on base? And 8 out of 10 kids put their hand up. And I'm like, okay, whose mom or dad, works for NASA? All 8 kids still put their hand up. I'm like, well, that's why this is normal to you in this area. So I've always wanted to be that bridge back to Boardman, with my work here at NASA with the Artemis program, and, back to the students there. So I'm really happy to have an opportunity to go back there this upcoming weekend and talk to the school, talk to the students, and it's open to anybody, talk to anyone, coming out this Friday.
Yeah, you're living a lot of kids' dreams by working for NASA, and it sounds like you got all the credentials, you did all the education, but I think NASA is sort of like that lightning strike. I don't necessarily think there's a track directly leading to doing what you do. So, what would you credit you getting the opportunity that you have now?
I would say perseverance.
Yeah.
I was that
Good word.
yeah, because it was once I set my mind to it, I mean, I could tell you the 2 points of when I decided what I was going to do when I grow up. Back in Mr. Sullivan's shop class at Glenwood, we did a drafting assignment, and it was just to do the 3 views, the front side and top view of this block. And I had never really thought of being an engineer or anything like that. And we did that assignment, and I just did it. And to me, it was something I could see. I could visualize the shape and everything. So I looked at that, and something clicked in me at that point that, hey, maybe this engineering thing is something I can do. Because even with my dad, we always did projects at the house. We would build things, we'd figure stuff out, fix stuff, which helps me now at my house. But
right.
I mean, I'm not as good as he was at our house, but I try. And, that kind of work with him, and then seeing like a professional side of it with drafting, I'm like, I should do this engineering thing. Maybe this is a good course for me, because I was always good in math and science, those classes I was getting A's and B's in. And so, but I didn't know what kind. I didn't know what kind of engineering I wanted to do. There's architecture, mechanical, automotive was something I looked into a lot because of the area, working at GM or anything like that was something more promoted. But in 1997, during the break between my sophomore and junior year on July 4th, because I remember the date, WKBN had a news article that night NASA was going to show the first images from the Pathfinder lander that they had sent to Mars. And I stayed up all night watching CNN, watching this thing and waiting. And when they finally showed that image from Mars, I was hooked. And everything about my childhood just worked with it, because I've always been that kid who read comic books, read sci-fi books, watched Star Trek and everything. And I saw that and I went, okay, I'm going to build rockets to fly to the moon. This is what I'm going to do. There was no doubt in my mind. So every decision I made, it was almost easier since I was so focused on what I was going to do, because, when I got to high school, after that point, my high school career changed from, starting on the football team to now I'm going to go take I'm going to take that class, instead of being on the football team, I'm going to take an extra study hall and I'm going to go take physics 1, or I'm going to go take a drafting class and anything like that, because I knew where I was going. And even though I didn't know how to get there, I knew what the final destination was going to be. So even decisions at Youngstown State, the first class you take with mechanical engineering is like an introduction to the class. And one of the questions they ask is, what track are you going to take? Are you going to take mechanical engineering, or are you going to take mechanical engineering tech? And the tech job, they said what it was. It's very hands-on. It's a very great job. And it's more of actually building the article instead of the theory behind it and doing the analysis. And I went, okay. And, whether this was true or not, I asked the professor, was like, well, which one does NASA hire more? And they're like, oh, the engineer. I'm like, okay, I'm doing that. I mean, it's just, everything just kept lining up to that. Even when I went to when I graduated Youngstown State, I have a degree in mechanical engineering. I could get a pretty good job. But at that time, I didn't have an avenue to get to NASA there. At the time, Glenn wasn't as predominant as one of the centers as it is now. So I went, okay, I have to go and continue my education. It wasn't my first idea. If I could have stopped school then, it would have been fine. After years of college, I would be like, oh, well, let's keep going. But then I lucked into an opportunity at the University of Alabama with a great professor, Dr. Paul Hubner, and he worked with some things with NASA. So that was the first, like, okay, I'm going to listen to you a little bit more here. And, it was a really good connection from the university to Huntsville here. So that made my decision going there, even though it was packing up everything and moving across the country, to a bit of a different area. The South and Youngstown, they have some commonality, but it's a little different. You have to get used to it.
Yeah, the weather's much better where you're at. That is for sure.
It is I'll tell you right now, the biggest problem though we're having this year, when you're a Yankee Northern guy, when you lose your Ohio skin, you're colder than everybody.
Yeah.
I am always freezing down here, which is funny because when I first came down, I was sitting out on the quad at Alabama in shorts and a t-shirt, looking at people in 60 degrees going, oh, come on. It's nothing. But then when you lose that, oh, I'm always freezing. It's terrible. But it was a great opportunity because right out of Alabama, before I even graduated, I was hired by Jacobs Engineering, which was a contractor to NASA. So I mean, starting to live in a dream right there, and then that transition through luck and good fortune into a civil servant job, which is what I do now with NASA.
Let's transition or segue over to the Artemis project, because I want to know like how long you've been involved and like where your contribution, where your specialty is in this project. So I guess for some of our listeners, give us a rundown of what the Artemis project even is.
Well, the Artemis project, it's NASA's focus to get to the moon and to have a permanent base there on the lunar surface. The Artemis rocket itself is one of the largest ones ever created, one of the most powerful ones in operation now. And it could, take astronauts to the lunar surface, and also take a large amount of cargo that we never had that capability before. It could take so much more cargo up into space than what we were able to do, say, with the shuttle. A stat I remember seeing a while ago, because I worked on the shuttle when I first started Jacobs, is the shuttle program. It took years and multiple different kinds of launches to build the International Space Station. With the capability that we're able to lift with the Artemis rocket, we can do that roughly in 9 to 10 launches. So think, because we're not constrained with the just a cargo bay of say an orbiter like we were with the modules that built the International Space Station. We can lift much larger objects, and the rocket itself is evolvable, where we can have crew versions like what we tested out with Artemis 1, and then Artemis 2, which we're going to have a crew launching soon. And we also can have cargo versions, which will not have a crew, just simply a shroud with a large amount of cargo that we could take up there. So you can lift so many more tons of equipment, vehicles, anything to the lunar surface that we have never been able to do before.
Now, is there a portion of the project that you're dedicated to? Because I'm sure this undertaking is huge, and there are probably
I mean, I am one of the many people that across the country have worked on this. What we do here in Huntsville in my group is we do the dynamics analysis of the rocket. And to say it like I always try to explain to my mom when she asks me, what do you do, Nick? It's it's what we put forces and try to find fundamental modes and frequencies, pretty much areas that you want to stay away from during launch, during the operation of the rocket. We do the model analysis of that beforehand, and then we test the actual vehicle to see how accurate our analysis is. And then we can once we know the comparison, we can predict how the rocket is going to react during launch and during its operation.
And is that with modeling? Like you have computers put in different hypotheticals?
Yes. Yeah, a lot of finite element modeling, which is 3D model rendering of the vehicle itself, where we could put in properties such as the materials, the way it's constrained, the way it's connected, and all those kind of things as a computer program. And then we can, understanding the physics behind it, we can then see if those models are giving us the right kind of answers. Because if you don't put in the right constraints, it doesn't matter how great of a computer you have, it's going to tell you the wrong answers. So we have to have that basis, that backing behind us of understanding how the vehicle is supposed to work and how these materials work, and then we can rely on our predictions. And then, of course, actually testing the vehicle. We were able to do the first full-scale integrated modal test of a vehicle since the shuttle in the 70s, a couple of years ago, down at Cape Canaveral, where we were actually, very finite shaking ways of exciting the vehicle, and then finding out how it reacted like what we were predicting. And we were really happy because it came out pretty close.
So, I love the fact that NASA is sort of bringing space exploration back to the forefront. I think, giving kids like you were as a kid, getting all excited, the prospect of going to the moon and then beyond that. So in the gap between the 60s and now, was this just a very hard thing to do? Is that why we haven't made more attempts to go to the moon?
Well, it was also what mission we were working towards. Since the Apollo missions, NASA's mission and focus was doing a lot of low Earth orbit science and missions with the shuttle program, which was a reusable vehicle, and then also building the International Space Station to do the science there. And those vehicles, such as the orbiter, they didn't have the capability to go to the moon. And going to the moon, is awesome as it sounds, it's an undertaking that you have to have a reason other than just going. The work that we were doing at that time to learn about how astronauts can stay in microgravity, the kind of medical research and all the stuff they've done on the shuttle, and especially on the ISS, that's built up. So now we have a basis that we can then move beyond low Earth orbit, and allowing at this moment our commercial partners to take that over. They are working in the low Earth orbit area, getting our astronauts up to the International Space Station. So, and we can now move beyond that to the moon and beyond.
So do you think, this is just my opinion, I think that probably within the next couple of years, maybe the next decade, that we'll have a presence on the moon where we can do a lot of our, launches from the moon. Have they already started doing the math on how, much of a savings it would be, where you don't have to contend with Earth's atmosphere and whatever to be able to get things in the, out into deep space and maybe to Mars?
Well, I hate to say I'm not really familiar with what kind of work on of launching from the moon, but what you're saying about us being on the moon is the goal. That is, okay. We are working diligently with this Artemis program to land on the moon, create opportunities on the moon to have lunar bases, and a presence there, like what we've been having for the last, say, 20 years in the ISS in low Earth orbit, but then having a presence on the lunar surface to do, science that maybe we couldn't do in low Earth orbit, and the main point of being in the lunar environment also is it's a testing bed for NASA and all of the Earth space programs to develop to then go beyond it. You don't want to just like take off and go to Mars or another planet and do that first. You could go to the moon now and then learn what you don't know. Because until you do something like that, no one knows what they don't know yet.
So a question about, and this kind of goes along with shuttling the payload up to the moon to kind of save the expense of doing it all through rocketry. You ever heard of like a space elevator or one of those tethers that you can use to pull it up through the atmosphere and then deliver it up to the outside of Earth's atmosphere?
I think most I've ever heard of one of those, maybe in a magazine I read.
I was wondering from an engineering standpoint if that is even possible, because I can imagine if that thing went unstable and you have this whipping space elevator that's just, crash.
Well, I mean, the fun thing about everything that we do here at NASA is sometime in the past, it was all science fiction. So exactly. now we're working to make it science fact. So I always keep my mind open to anything that's a possibility, because we've all been inspired by something that we saw on TV that was just, made up, and probably made up with models and, whatever Gene Roddenberry or, George Lucas had at the time. So yeah, I never discount any ideas that one day could be happening.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the other projects with, you had the Voyager missions and Curiosity, and we've done a bunch of Mars exploration with the rovers, and then recently the helicopter. Like this has been over the last 40 years. We've been done a good deal of probing for these different environments. So how excited are you to the prospect of being on Mars maybe one day?
Oh, very exciting. I mean, it's one of the goals that we're working for with the whole Artemis program. And that kind of thing, like I said, it inspires everyone even to want to work here. I mean, myself, the Sojourner Truth rover, that was about the size of a shoebox, and that's what that was a huge accomplishment to get up there in 1997. And just the recent one, was it Rover 2020, I think it was called, with the helicopter. That thing is, I mean, comparably, it's about the size of, I think, the size of a car. I mean, it's large. Down at Kennedy, they have a beautiful exhibit showing the rovers on Mars. And when you look at them, you see the difference in size as they've gone over the last, say, 20 years. And each, I mean, lifting anything up to space and there is an immense undertaking. So, getting something to Mars like a rover that's the size of a shoebox was incredibly, a huge accomplishment. And then also now taking something that big, like car size, to Mars is even immense. That's even 10 times harder. I mean, I think with the last few, they had that crane elevator, lower it down, instead of having the balloons deploy from the rover for Sojourner Truths. So, and that stuff being successful, just it inspires everybody here to think that one day something we can do with human beings.
Yeah, it blows my mind because they're doing this from tons of miles away with a delay in communication, and then you see this thing that would be tough for people to do if they were at the helm of controls, and it goes flawlessly all that distance away.
Yeah, it's an amazing undertaking. I've got to work with the JPL guys a little bit, just a little, and I've always been so impressed with their work when it comes to robotics and probes and satellites and stuff. They're some of the best.
So I'm going to pat engineers on the back on this, but it seems like all of the apparatus that we send to other planets or out into space, they're usually intended to last like 4 or 5 years, and they get like 40 or 50 years out of these things. So what makes these things able to, go through what space has to offer and still serve all this time out there?
Well, I'm not 100% sure about what kind of qualification they give to them, since I didn't work on them. But I mean, we never try to build something that barely will work here. I know that. So I mean, the fact that these people spend so much time, so much efforts on this kind of an undertaking, when they build it, they want to make it right, and they want to make it strong. They want to make it, I mean, the helicopter alone, I think it was only slated for 1 or 2 flights, and it flew for years. Or at least a year or so, and then it just,
and you probably have redundancies and contingencies built into every part in that apparatus too.
Oh yeah, I mean, one of the main cultures here that we really do push is safety here at NASA, which will go for our articles, and of course, and even more to our people. So we, like I said, we don't build something just on the edge of working. When we send it, it's to a level we feel very comfortable on.
So what do you think the biggest enemy is to space exploration? Is it like radiation or heat, or like what do you think is the biggest thing that's working against us?
I think it's just interest.
Okay.
And I mean that is when it comes to anything scientific, I think in the end of the day, if given the opportunity, we will overcome it. I think we will push through I mean, just by being able to do anything to get out of low Earth orbit, to go out into the, the universe, that the scientifical and the engineering progress we will be able to make. We just need to have the interest of people to do it. And, I think if given the opportunity, I think we can overcome anything out, standing in our way to get to where we want to go.
Good answer. That was a good one. So let's do you think we're going to get in the fringes of reality here, multiverse, time travel, speed of light. Now, do you think we'll ever engineer any kind of apparatus that could go near the speed of light?
I mean, Star Trek was in what year again?
Yeah, right.
I mean, we might have time,
Tomorrow, that might be on your desk as your next project here. So
we'll see if my boss watches this. But I mean, like I said, and I'm not discounting any ideas out there, because as a Trekkie, I would love to see that kind of stuff. But science fiction always inspires us to do other things and create things that you didn't think could even be possible. I mean, I have a cell phone in my pocket that pretty much is what Dr. McCoy's tablet. We could hook that to medical equipment and stuff like that. I know it's inspired me to think outside of the box a lot, and from stuff I used to watch and things. I mean, I don't think I could go around this entire building here and not find someone who was either inspired when they were a kid by something, Star Wars, Star Trek. There's always that one guy that says Firefly, and there's just that kind of stuff is so important to getting the imagination going. So things that could be one day, like I said, what used to be science fiction one day will be science fact.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause once you start looking into the vastness of space and the actual distances we're combating, propulsion that exists today is not going to get us to some of the places that I know that we're going to want to hit next. And so, but I can just see this sort of like dominoing into, okay, well, if we need to make a gravity engine or whatever to get us further in distance and at faster speeds, we're going to definitely stumble on it.
Well, I mean, we're always working on, I mean, just even with SLS, the evolvability to get it to be more powerful, to be able to lift more objects into space. I mean, we have different iterations. The version that you've seen now that launched in Artemis 1 is the Block 1. And that's there's a crewed version, cargo version. We're working on now what's called Block 1B, which is another version that can lift even more cargo up to the moon. And then moving down the line, we have one called Block 2, which has evolved boosters, which there's been different ways of looking at that, of how do you make the boosters more powerful, liquid boosters versus solid boosters, and a lot of different studies going on with that. So even with the capabilities we have now, we're always trying to test the limits of how to improve them. I mean, the boosters we're using now of Artemis with Artemis are 5-stage boosters, and everyone looks at them and goes, oh, those are the shuttle boosters. Well, sort of, but the shuttle boosters were 4-stage boosters. There's an entire section of fuel added on to give more boost and more thrust for Artemis because we're going farther. So there's always just something more we're trying to do, and trying to evolve and get better as we go.
So why don't you tell us about you're visiting your alma mater here, you're giving a talk in front of the students and the public. Why don't you tell everybody about your event?
Yeah, I've been really excited to be invited back there. I've tried over the years. I've done a number of Zoom meetings, with Mr. Land and the Science Club there at Boardman High School, and I guess they talked and they wanted to have me come up there and actually present, to the students themselves, and they've decided to have it as a great event this upcoming Friday at 7 p.m. at the Performing Arts Center, and it's just an opportunity to reach out to the community. And I look at it as what I've always tried to do, is be that bridge to people who, maybe didn't think you could be in Mahoning Valley and then work in space, work in any field. It's a great time now to, be in the space program, because as much as I love NASA, there's so many different opportunities as an engineer, as anything, to be a part of the space program in general. We have contractors, we have everything moving forward that we didn't have when I was even looking at it back when I was going to Boardman. So it's great to be able to come back to Boardman and, tell them how I did it, tell them how I would recommend, I'd probably not recommend how I did it. Do it your own way. It's probably going to be easier, but, just, reach out and have, hopefully a kid, because you never know. I mean, if we have 20 kids there and one of them decides, hey, this space program is a good idea. I didn't think I could do that. Maybe now they think they can. It'll be worth all the effort. So I wanted to be able to come back there, talk about how I, made it here to NASA, talk about the Artemis program. And also we're talking about the solar eclipse that's going to be coming near that area.
Oh, yeah, we didn't talk
because that's a big thing. The teachers have been talking to their students of, and they have. I will tell you, as much as I am a very interested observer of the stars. I have a telescope. I barely know how to work it, but I love to figure it out. And I know half of those kids from when I've seen that Boardman High School and Glenwood and Center have been doing lately, they're going to know more about the solar eclipse than I will.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to bring it up to the people who don't. I mean, they've done such an amazing job to promote the fact that there's going to be totality near that area. I mean, it's like, I think you could get 2 to 3 minutes of solar totality, like 30 minutes away from Youngstown. So it's way worth the drive to do it. I was privileged in 2017 to be over in Metropolis, Illinois, and see 2 to 3 minutes of totality when the last solar eclipse came, and it is an amazing event. I can't recommend it enough. And the difference between 99% solar eclipsing, the sun being eclipsed, or totality is it's a completely different ball game. Everything's it's not black, it's purple. Like everything goes purple around you.
Really?
And the vision that you get to see with the moon directly in between the sun is it's just phenomenal. I can't recommend to anyone more. I'll be going to see it this upcoming April as well. So it'll be interesting to talk to the students about that as well.
So your show, is it a ticketed event? How do people make reservations and show
I
up?
don't think so. I think it's just show up. Just come over to Boardman, and you know, I'm going to make sure my mom and dad are there, so at least 2 people come. But you know, whoever wants to come out, you know, they're more than welcome. It's just going to be a fun time, just to talk what we're doing here at NASA, and we'll have a Q&A session after, just to have anyone's interest and answer any questions I can.
Now, do you have social media? Can people follow you and kind of keep tabs on what you're working on and into?
Well, I don't really. Mine is probably the most boring social media you will find. I would recommend going to anything to do with our NASA social media. They do an amazing job at nasa.gov, and all of the links to like Facebook, Twitter. Sometimes I find out about things, even though I work here, I find out about it through our social media. And it's just it's a great resource if you want to know more about Artemis, about our missions, about landers, anything. That's the place to go.
Beautiful. Well, Nick, thank you for joining me here today. I appreciate it. And thank you for NASA for lending you here to talk about the Artemis project. And I wish you the best of luck.
Well, thanks, Joe. Thanks so much for having me. It's going to be a great event this Friday, and I appreciate you interviewing me for this.
Absolutely.